Hi everyone, today's video is going to be on ageism. So I have some notes, some copious notes, so I'll go through the video with those in mind. So if I tend to read, that's just what's happening. But yeah, I was inspired this week because I thought some ageism came up in my personal life, and I thought, well, let's address it like as an issue, because it is an issue. And let's kind of, undo it. Let's work on undoing it in our own communities, right? If you want to listen to what I have to say about it. So yeah, I often meet like older women who, say that the younger generations of women are like totally poisoned by third wave feminism, and I really think that type of thinking is destructive, trying to have unity and equality amongst women, because age is just another way in which we are divided, in society, and specifically by men. Women are divided by age, in terms of our functionality to men. And this is part of why, like, in terms of my own spiritual practice, I've never as a witch, I've never really identified with maiden, mother, crone, concepts of the triple goddess. And I actually, right now, I'm, working with other forms of triple goddess to, because there are, to kind of, undo some of that, because I think I think it's a very heterosexual, for one, way of defining women, but it also defines us in terms of, how fucked we are by men, Really. I mean, think about it. The maiden is a virgin. She's pre-fucked. The mother is, a pregnant woman. She's been fucked, and impregnated, and then the crone is, no longer being fucked. So, this is kind of how women are classified in society anyway. And I think, it's not something I'm about. It's not something I identify with. I'm not about that. So, yeah, I think we really need to be clear about, the fact that these are arbitrary distinctions and definitions that divide us, and that a lot of what we associate with different age groups is just, it's not true, and I think society is really age obsessed as well, there's so much emphasis placed on the value of youth and that sort of thing, as if that's what's even interesting. So anyway, yeah. I also think there's power differential that goes on with it, I think women kind of in the middle of the age range of life, they have a bit of status, and the ways they treat older women and younger women are both kind of detrimental. So yeah, I guess one example of this is the power differential when older women often talk with younger women. Especially if they've had children. This is, goddamn, this is the amount of, I know what's right and you don't know shit, even if they don't know shit, is overwhelming. And the conviction with which they speak as if they have authority over you, which they don't have. That's been something that's been very interesting to me, especially when I was a younger feminist. I met very few women who would speak to me as an equal. Some did, of course they did, wouldn't be here if they hadn't. But yeah, a lot of the time it's just you're young and you don't know shit, regardless of how much fucking knowledge you have, or what kind of life you've lived. It's inconsequential. It's assumed that if you're young, you're immature and you don't know anything. And immaturity is something that is, I don't even know if it's the right word, for it. And now that I'm thinking about it, the term immaturity is it's such an ageist term in itself. like that we have to think of another way of describing that phenomenon as somebody being like irresponsible, I think is maybe a better term. Yeah. So yeah, and the tendency to talk at instead of to, it builds animosity, it builds distrust. This is especially a problem if you're running in the same fucking political circles. Like, women are generally on the same page in those circles about a lot of issues. You should never speak to a woman in that circle as if you have, well, you should never speak to any woman as if you have authority over her. Let's just say, regardless, you should never treat any woman like you have authority over her, you know, or talk at her instead of to her. I think that's something that should be avoided, you know. If you can't say anything nice, maybe just don't say anything at all is kind of my policy now. Some of the time anyway. But you know what I mean? Like, just don't go there. But yeah, it's really a problem if you're in the same political community and spaces, you know, going out of your way to attend radical, like, female-only, like, events and spaces, and you're being exposed to, like, that kind of ageism. It's really frustrating and disheartening, and younger women often feel dismissed, like, a lot of the time. And because of that, like, a lot of them don't get involved in the ways that they could, especially the most radical definitely don't. You know, the women who can, like, put up with that crap or are used to it or think it's okay, maybe that's what it is. I've noticed, you know, and maybe it's a class thing as well. I try to always, like, remember that I am interacting oftentimes with a lot of middle class women who have a different culture and who think like that, who accept being treated badly a lot of the time as part of their culture. It's interesting, you know, like, I don't know, it just, I just, you know, was raised in a way where it's like, if somebody is shitty to you, you just, you know, you don't continue to interact with them to whatever extent you can, you know. That was just kind of like my experiences, but it seems like middle class people just are very, very invested in maintaining status. So, and yeah, I mean, you lose status if you have conviction. That's just reality. So yeah, it's frustrating, and it's just kind of like, why is this even happening if you're all on the same page anyway, right? Like, being talked at, you know, or if often if older women are challenged, oh God forbid they be challenged, well, like, then it's a problem. Then it's like, you don't know shit, and that's ageism. It's ageism, really, and it's, you know, the political analysis doesn't have an age, you know. Women can have it at many ages. And on the flip side, I want to talk about how ageism affects older women. And I haven't personally experienced this because I'm not an older woman yet. Hopefully I get there. But it's really, you know, ageism against older women is deadly. You know, it's so fucking harmful, you know. Especially when they reach an age, you know, when they lose all their fucking value in patriarchy, you know, all their value according to men. Like, they're just, nope. Older women's invisibility, what did I say here? Older women's invisibility in a culture dominated by men makes them especially susceptible to abuse. Yeah, I mean, that's true. The rates of rapes and crimes, like violent male crimes against elderly women, are insane. And in fact, like if you want to like cry and not go to sleep at night tonight, look up stories like the prevalence of teenage boys raping elderly women. It's insane. And the other thing too is, like, older women's bodies, like, often have, I mean, it's kind of it's a violation to be fucked regardless of what age you are, really. But, like, older women's have been through menopause, you know, the vaginal, like, the vagina, like, it changes, and it's often, you know, not as moist, and it's painful. Like, it's a lot more painful and a lot more, like, serious damage, like, physically can be done when an older woman is raped, you know? So it's like, it's awful, but it's super prevalent. So anyway, I'm bringing this up because younger and middle-aged feminists often contribute to a culture of invisibility around older women's issues, and not just issues, older women's lives, their experiences, and them themselves. And, you know, they make it oftentimes difficult for older women to even participate, like if the fees are really high. That's something that a lot of older women are on fixed incomes and often can't, you know, make more money. So if there's not, you know, a sliding scale, or if there isn't, like, you know, maybe scholarships provided, it's incredibly hard for older women to attend. And they're a group of women who need a lot of advocacy because of the rates of crime and violence against them, and also other issues. So yeah, it's just, yeah, it's a problem. And you know, if they're not able to participate, if they're not able to be in the women's movement advocating for themselves, you know, this is just going to increase the isolation that many of them are in, and, you know, division between them, the movement again. And of course, like I've said many times, you know, do you want a united movement? Do you want a movement that is segregated and divided, or do you want a movement that's united on principles and really in solidarity with other women? And these are the questions you need to ask yourself with the positions you are taking. Like, what is the goal? What kind of movement are you trying to create? What kind of movement do you want? Now, it doesn't mean that this is easy. It isn't, but, like, you have to, like, at least in principle think about it, right? What do you want? So anyway, that and also, yeah, like, again, about the thing, you know, a lot of older women, they've been around for a long time. They've known a lot of each other for a long time. If they can attend things, you know, it's really heartbreaking for a lot of them to not be able to go to events and see old friends, and to feel like their, like, life's work as a feminist and all the time and energy they put into the women's movement meant something. Like, if they can't even fucking attend, it's a real problem. So, like, making attendance easy is important. And also, again, and this ties in with disabled women as well, disability accessibility is important as well. Like, and just having, like, spaces that are, you know, comfortable, or, like, considering it, like, how do we help everyone attend? You know, maybe you can't afford to make everything as comfortable as possible, but you can, like, go out of your way to make it so that women who struggle already to get there in the first place can, you know, aren't even more put out by the experience, because you don't want to make it so that they're not attending, you know. Anyway, the whole point about ageism and how it affects the women's movement specifically is, I think it's important to realize that people of all ages can have good or bad politics. And just because someone, you know, just because someone's older doesn't mean they have good politics necessarily, or younger doesn't mean they have bad politics. And I think one way in which feminists participate in this kind of way of thinking is that we talk about feminism in terms of waves a lot of the time. So we will talk about, like, a lot of older women were part of the second wave, and then younger women were part of the third wave. Like, I don't know about you, but third wave feminism has been dead in terms of, like, you know, what I grew up with, you know. Of course, I was exposed to some third wave feminist stuff in the 90s, and honestly, a lot of it was cool. I really don't like the dismissal of third wave feminists a lot of the time, because they were doing a lot of cool things, like Riot Girl and the whole zine culture that women were doing, like the independent publishing. That was important work that affected women's lives, you know, and maybe it's eroded over time and become, like, really shitty, but that was an important part of like women's communication history, and like you have to think of like how much women throughout time have tried to communicate with one another. So like to just dismiss things outright is just insane to me. So yeah, but the thing is, like, within second wave feminism there were liberals and radicals. Within third wave, like, you know, liberals and radicals. I think oftentimes what's referred to as third wave feminism, and this is why I don't like the wave kind of thinking anyway. Like, third wave feminism is kind of coined by Rebecca Walker, the daughter of Alice Walker, who's, you know, a man lover basically. So she, you know, wanted to kind of make this difference between her mother's generation of feminists and her generation of feminists, which was really a case of like, you know, a radical materialist analysis versus a liberal idealistic one. You know, she wanted to make it about age, or she did make it about age, and many other women got into this, like, oh yeah, it's an age thing. It's not, because, you know, women, you know, working in, because this was in the 80s when the whole third wave thing was coined. I mean, we often think about that. So it seems really insane to me to like call women of my generation third wavers. We're not. We weren't like, that was started in the 80s and 90s. Like, I don't see third wave feminism happening now. And you know what? Radical feminists have been working consistently throughout time. So just, you know, kind of figuring out that that's not the issue here. The issue is, you know, liberalism versus radicalism. And that's just something that every kind of wave, I think, more of in terms of like, you know, surges of activity has to deal with, you know. So yeah, I think right now what we have is a lack of a surge of a women's movement. We don't really have a vibrant women's movement, and you know, that's also too, I think, part of the problem, because, you know, a lot of this stuff and a lot of what we talk about is really theoretical. We don't have the experiences of sitting in rooms with one another and, you know, going over these things and organizing together like women of the past often had, or women in the past often had, not of the past. Some of them of the past, of course, but, you know, we a lot of us don't have as much experience with that. I mean, I do have experience like organizing, but like, you know, nowhere near what I would like to have. And that's just, I think, part of the culture now. It's incredibly difficult to organize as well. I mean, it always has been, but damn it, they make it hard. The men make it hard. Okay. What do I have in my notes here? I'm sorry, I'm just glancing down here. So yeah, in terms of the whole, like, the wave and age thing, you know, age does not affect your fundamental political and philosophical and ideological, like, position, you know. I've met many young women with fucking amazing politics, and I've met, you know, older women who couldn't analyze their way out of a paper bag with shitty politics. Very male identified as well. And I've even met like elderly women. I don't know about that term too. I've heard some older women say they don't like it. So I'm just going to say older women. So sorry about that. That support the male infiltration of women's communities and protected spaces. And, you know, a lot of older women are sadomasochists and sex industry shills. So this idea that, like, age somehow brings a level of responsibility or humility or wisdom to people is just not true, okay? Like, you can be young and wise, and you can be old and just not know a goddamn thing. So anyway, it's important to not be divided by the ways in which men want us to be divided, and to really see each other for the people that we are, and to have compassion for the women that we are, and to, I think, celebrate the women that we are, and to not fall into these traps of like, you're young, you don't know shit, you're old, you're irrelevant, your kind is gonna die out anyway. Oh, that's one more thing I should mention, and ageism comes into play as radical feminists a lot, because how many of us hear that like, the world's just gonna be a better place when all these second wave TERFs die? Well, there's plenty of young women who know the difference between a man and a woman. That's just reality. So that's never gonna happen. You can't kill our ideas. We've shared them with each other. Women reach out and communicate with each other, and that's, I think, a big part of what feminism is, at least to me. It's reaching across, no matter how difficult it is, no matter what the barriers are, and fucking touching each other in that way, and telling our truths to each other, because women believe other women, and that's, I think, the power of it. So yeah, just kind of think about these things a bit more. Like, are you participating in some things that maybe are ageist or not, and like, have you maybe like, oh, maybe I've been really disrespectful, or really kind of not given younger women like the respect maybe they deserve, because it doesn't matter what age you are. It's hard to be in the world with this consciousness. It's so hard. And I think especially when you're younger, a lot of younger women lack community. That's the thing. A lot of older women do have a bit of a community. They lived in a time when it was, that thing was established, and younger women are just very isolated a lot of the time. So like, I think it's very damaging now to see ageism played out, because it just further isolates women and keeps them from, fulfilling fulfilling their desire to be a part of this women's movement that's bigger than just them. So yeah, just think about it, and yeah, leave some comments about ageism and stuff that I can't cover or didn't think of. Like, obviously, like I said, I'm 31 years old. I only have my knowledge up until this point about my experiences. So I've experienced ageism, as a younger woman, but I would love to hear from older women, like more examples of ageism that you've experienced personally. Oh, one more thing I want to add, like, I think younger women and older women should, a lot of the times, work together. I think that's really powerful, and some of my best, like, working, organizing relationships were with women decades older than me. I'm talking like 50, or not 50 decades, 5 decades older than me, And we would get along great and just enjoy each other's company and fucking do the work. You'd be amazed, like, when you're dedicated to something, how much that shit falls away and how deep your relationships can be with women. So anyway, yeah, leave a comment, like, and share the video. You know what to do. Check out the links that I share, all of that. And take care until the next video.